Tonight we will start examining what appears to be taking center stage in social media and political circles: proportional representation electoral system. As the country prepares for next year's public elections, there are concerns over how Sierra Leoneans at home and abroad look askance at one another, most times literally tearing apart one another over who or which political party should hold the knife and the yam all together. Reports of violence in the lead-up to past elections became the order of the day. Ordinary people fear the political pot in Sierra Leone is bubbling and explosion is imminent. This has urged a few people to start examining alternative electoral system. Legal luminary and politician Suleiman Banja Tijansi, in a piece recently published, agreed with media and PR expert Dr. Julius that for national harmony, proportional representation was preferred to constituency elections, canvassing arguments why so. We are here tonight to dissect the highs and lows of both electoral systems. With me in the studios are Lena, Thompson, political scientist and lecturer at the Department of Political Science, Fobe College, University of Sierra Leone, and a man who continues to set the agenda for this discourse. He served this country as Information and Broadcasting Minister and now a media and political commentator, Dr. Julius Spencer. Welcome to Bottom Line, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much.
Well, you too can have your say on our Facebook page at SLBC TV channel 31 or by SMS to 030022-639. The number again, 030022-639. My name is Joseph Ibinda Kapuwa. Welcome back to the program, Bottom Line. Let's get started. Proportional representation and constituency representation. What are they? I mean, how do they work?
So unusual. Well, there are various types of electoral system, but the two most popular ones that is used around the world is PR, which is proportional representation, and also majority as well. And under each system, there are different types of PR, different types also of the majority. If I could go to the PR system, you have the two most popular one is the list system, the party list system, and also the single transferring vote. If I go to the majoritarian system, you have the first past the post system, you have the alternative vote system as well. And we have been using the first past the post system, but we also have a system within that where we have a second ballot for presidential elections. So each country would have to examine itself, its political system, its political culture, and so forth, in order to find out which electoral system works best for them and what is the outcome for them. But in the West, especially if you look at Britain, if you look at the United States, is the first past the post system. And the first past the post system, the issue people get to that, it entrenches a two-party dominant system, which disregard other smaller political parties, and that is the issue there. But each electoral system has its own advantages and disadvantages. So as I said before, you have to look at what is best for your own context in order to ensure the system that is put in place works best for you. PR also, people tend to think that it's a one size that fits all. As I said before, there are various PR systems. We had in Sierra Leone, we've had PR system before in Sierra Leone. In 1996, we had
nationalists.
The nationalists there. And then in 2002 we had a district block system. So these two we were able to put into our own context, and the reason for that was because just after the war and so forth, the constituency system was not feasible because not all areas were accessible. So we had that system to vote in representative, but that in itself is problematic as well. I will stop there for now.
Okay, yeah, because I was going to continue with you, especially talking about the different forms of the PR. I was going to ask, how do those forms actually affect the political systems? I mean, you spoke of the context, some countries look at that best suits their own circumstance also. But probably again, I haven't identified those different forms of PR also. One may wish to know how those PR, affect their political system.
Well, if you take the list system, it's the parties that basically produces a list and people make their choices for. Okay, so and then if you take the single transfer vote system, it's also the votes are actually transferred. The list candidate is dispersed off, and then you have a kind of preferential kind of treatment. But as I say, you have to look at your own political system. One of our problems that we have is that we have a dominant two-party system, and first past the first post reinforces that. And the issues that we have with that is we've seen the political space become very toxic. And the idea is that normally, if you have a broad spectrum of political parties that own that space, you're going to have more dialogue, you can have compromise, bargaining, and so forth. But again, as I said, each electoral system has its merits and its yeah.
Yes, let me invite Dr. Spencer insofar as your understanding of this whole much talked about now PR and probably the current system that you have, because we need to get the people to understand first. PR, okay, what do we have now, and the PR, how do they get across to you?
Well, first of all, I will take off from where Lena ended. I totally agree with her. Whatever system we want to use has to look at our context and find whatever suits us. Unfortunately, I think most people are taking positions without fully analyzing what the context is and also not fully understanding the PR system. As she has said, there are several different types of PR systems. The two most popular ones are the list system and the single transferable vote. For us in Sierra Leone, I don't believe the single transferable vote will work because it needs really people who can read and write to be able to identify specific whatever, and then it's a bit complicated. But even with the party list, there are two types. You have the closed party list and you have the open party list. With the closed party list, the party decides everything, that's it. With the open party list, the people have a say in who is elected from that list. Now, context. Those of us who've spent virtually our entire lives in Sierra Leone know that we have transitioned from a relatively peaceful society, peaceful politics, to a situation where our politics, as Lena said, is toxic. Everything has become politicized. The two-party system and the winner-take-all system, to me, is adversarial, and it does not make for unity. We are not able to sit down together, all of us Sierra Leoneans, and decide what is good for all of us. Politics now has become a do-or-die affair. You win, you get everything. You decide who is whatever, from minister to ambassador to members of parastatal boards, etc., etc. And if we look at really what has been happening, let's take the local council election, for example. You could have 4 or 5 parties of people contesting. The person who has the highest number of votes gets maybe about 30-something% of the votes. The others put together get almost 70% of the votes. But then it is that person with the 30% votes that gets everything. So the question of the ward committees, it is that person that identifies who goes into the ward committees. So more than 50% of the population don't have a say in the running of their district or their council or their ward. If you come to the national level, although because of the system we have where you have the second round voting, whoever wins has to get more than 50%. But still, even if the person gets 60%, 40% of the population did not support that candidate. So what happens to that 40? They have no say basically in what happens. They do not get any. That is why our politics has become so toxic. And it has become violent. I started advocating for PR in 2008 because I had witnessed elections as a young man under the one-party system, even under the multi-party system at independence, etc., and then the one-party system, and even in the one-party system, because it was being articulated, between the party, there was violence. And then we tried proportional representation, as she said, because of the circumstances at the time. Elections, peaceful. The national list system, peaceful. We got people into parliament who are of real high caliber, who, if they are contested in a constituency, would probably not have won the election because it's a matter of popularity. District block system, again, no violence. We went back to constituency based and violence started again. And it has been getting progressively worse. So for me, what do we hope to achieve with our electoral system? I believe that what we should be aiming at are 2 things. First of all, a system that encourages national unity, that encourages us to sit down and dialogue and discuss and eventually arrive at an agreement. We want a system that will help us to focus on national development issues rather than on who is going to get the pot. In my play, I call it the national cake. Who's going to be eating the national cake? Is it just a small group of people, or is it going to be shared amongst everybody? So for me, those are the issues. I am 100% convinced that some form of proportional representation is what we need. But, as you said, we need a lot of discussion on the issue. We need people to understand what we are talking about. We need us all to agree on which kind of proportional representation will be suitable for us. There is the issue of threshold, which is the minimum number of votes you should get on the party list system, etc., that will qualify you for a seat. For example, you take parliamentary election. If you have 5 parties contesting, what is the minimum percentage of the votes that you need to get 1 seat? There are, even in that, there are different methods of calculating.
Okay, all right then. I'll stop you and then cross over to Lena again for a while. I think the other bit of the question was, how does it work in our circumstances, in our context, the PR system? You started out talking about, who gets 30% or whatever the percentage is. How can that be representative of, that area, that community, that set of people also? Weighing on the advantages of this system, if it were to work here, maybe you want to also sample if it can work in our situation, and if at all, how and what advantages would that be?
Well, some of the advantages of the PR system normally that is said is that it encourages small parties to be part of the it encourages them to be part of the system. Also, it ensures that the proportion of votes that is cast is also in proportion to the seats that you have in parliament. The issue about first past the post system, as Doc just rightly said, is that there's a huge vote that is wasted, because if somebody wins even with 60%, there's a huge chunk, 40%, that is wasted. And another thing about first past the post system, countries like in Britain, governments and parties become win an election on 30%. So you see a whole chunk is wasted. So in PR system, the idea is that political parties would get the seats that is proportionate to their popular vote.
Is that workable in Sierra Leone?
It can be workable in Sierra Leone. Of course it can be workable in Sierra Leone. We've done it in 1996 and in 2002.
Would you say it failed in Sierra Leone? Because we started off with that, I mean, when we introduced democracy in 1996 and 2002. Today we're talking about a different system.
But the problem with PR is that PR sometimes become faceless. The system we have now, we can make a clear link between the constituency and the MP. Okay? I know who my MP is, but I think I know who my MP is. You know? So there's a clear, I know if I'm here, that man over there is my MP. That man in parliament, I can see what he's doing. PR system is a multi-member constituency. So you might have in some it's in some way in some regions or district or whatever, you might have 5 MPs. So it's difficult to identify, except if you want. It's difficult to identify. And what we had in 2002 and 1996 was, people have said that you have people who went into parliament who basically had no business there. Okay, you had people who were they did not understand the system based on the party list. That party list, Doc, whether it's closed or open, it is open to the whims and exactly. And so even though we would like to say it is much more, PR system would be a much more fair everything, but the party themselves have a lot to play with that. And also an important thing is that somebody who is in the lower end of that list would not even challenge or what the executive, because he wants to move up the list. He would basically succumb to everything that they actually say. So even in that sense, when you have a PR system, as I said before, it seems to be kind of faceless, because you cannot identify the MP solely to a constituency. So it's sometimes
and that's where I'll cross over to Dr. Spencer especially. I mean, you also be talking about the advantages of the PR system, but you raise a very serious issue insofar as relating, for example, with your member of parliament is an issue. Where does that leave choice? I mean, I should be able to count on who represents me, but if it has to do with either a party executive or someone somewhere deciding that. So essentially what I gather from Lena is that the PR system may be fine, is fine as the case may be, but practically there are issues. Theoretically, yes, I mean, you don't have violence, people are represented, you don't have all of these factions, but then on practical terms, some issues are missing.
What are those practical terms? I know what you're saying. You cannot directly identify your representative. For me, that is an advantage that we need to move towards. Reason being, our parliamentarians are under so much pressure from their constituents. Somebody wants to get relative getting married, funeral, one put bundle, etc., etc. They go to the parliamentarian.
We push down brook.
Exactly. So the parliamentarian has become, in a way, their breadwinner, which is not the way it's supposed to be. Even our parliamentarians, the majority of them, I believe, don't fully understand what their role should be. The role of parliament is to make laws and to oversee the system, governance system, checks and balances, etc., etc. But they now find themselves having to deal with development issues at constituency level, everybody is coming to them. That is why their salary will never be enough for them. Because most of their salary goes towards things that their constituents want. Is that what you want to continue with? No. Development issues should be dealt with by the council. The local councils, they're the ones who are close to the people who should work on development issues for that community. And if it is set up properly, the ward committees are made up of a broad range of people, spectrum, thought processes, etc. They can do what is necessary for that community. So for me, the fact that you will not be able to directly identify that Joseph Kapuwa is my parliamentarian, I have a problem to pay my hospital fees, let me go to him, is an advantage for me. Now, even with that, systems can be worked out whereby parliamentarians can be assigned by the party, depending on where you come from, to basically relate to that community. But from the point of view of seeking their views on issues that are coming to parliament, laws that are coming to parliament, what is happening, so that they can work on ensuring that the system works and that the laws that are in place are appropriate for the context in which we live today. That is the role of parliament. But over time, we have all forgotten what the role of parliament is. And parliamentarians now find themselves having to deal with issues that they should not be dealing with. So for me, the fact that we are not going to be able under the proportional representation system, we deal with the party list system, to point at this as Joseph Kapuwa is my representative. Let me go to him.
How did you get to this system? I mean,
can I just
yes, please.
And make a point? I think, Doc, when we look at our system here, I don't think we can blame our electoral system, but we also have to understand our political culture as well. Mm-hmm. Because even with the PI system, you will have that problem where people they go say like a man buys shoes or whatever. But where the expectation on our MPs are that much, because we have placed them on such a pedestal that whatever PI, whatever system we have, that will be the culture that is in there. You know, so, and also you spoke about violence. Who says there will be violence on PR? First of all, it will be inter-party violence. It's the same. Yeah. You know, it will be you will not get it between political parties, but you will get it within the party, because everybody is vying for their own candidate. So we have to look. I think for us, the electoral, looking at the electoral system should be secondary. You're looking at our own political system. What is it? What is our expectation? What burdens have we placed on political parties and the representative? One thing about election education is to tell people that your MP is not there to give you food. Your MP is there to advocate for you in parliament. That is why you vote for them.
Lena, please address me on this issue. I'll stay with you on this issue of violence or less violence. I mean, during elections. Mm-hmm. I mean, that appears to be the concern of people. I mean, today we are having by-elections across the country in different areas. Hopefully, we will not hear reports of, mudslinging and all of this from those elections. But if you compare the 1996 elections and 2002 elections and 1996 elections to the recent ones we've had, I mean, in terms of violence across the board, I mean, you would tend to say, I mean, in those elections, 1996 and 2002, I mean, there were less violence. Agreed, internally within the party, there can be internal, criticisms, disagreements. But on a larger scale, I mean, which is really the situation, I mean, there is bound to be more violence as we see today.
Yes, but I would not blame first past the post. I would blame our party system. Okay. Yeah, I would blame the rhetoric that comes from our representative. Okay, because the first past the post system is a democratic system. Okay, it's not as proportionate as PR, but it is within the bounds of the democracy. So for me, the electoral system has a lot to play in the type of elections that we have and so forth. But at the same time, our political culture, our political socialization, where we come from, where we are going, our expectations, how we perceive ourselves as Sierra Leoneans, how we basically think that the only way to wealth in Sierra Leone is through politics. These are some of the ideas that people have. So that when I stand for election, I have to win at all cost. But it is not, politics is not about, it's not a vocation anymore. It's a do or do thing. And that is not what it should be about. So when you have this adversarial first past the post, it says simple plurality, it compounds that culture that is surrounding us for us to have this kind of violence and so forth. But sometimes we just have to take things back, calm down, and also have dialogue. PRC said, okay, we bring in diverse groups of political parties. Yeah, we say, I think we had about 20-something
political parties.
Yes, you will say that at some point each of them will be able to be elected. But democracy is not only about the process of election, it's also about how you are effective as well in government as well.
Absolutely agree with what Lena has said. The difference in our opinion is how did we get to where we are? And I believe that our electoral system has played a major role in that. And if we continue with the kind of electoral system we're having, we cannot break the chain. What we need to do in my view is break the chain. Let us stop what is, from my perspective, what is fueling all this dissension and all this violence, etc. As Lena herself has said, the winner-take-all system, what's the word now? Makes that happen more than in the PR system. So for me, what do we want to achieve going forward? Let's say in the next 10, 20 years, what kind of a society do we want? How can we get people to understand that your parliamentarian is not your breadwinner? How can we get parliamentarians themselves to have some insulation from that pressure? If the system continues as it is impossible for us to, it can only get worse. So for me, we need to take a step back and look at what is it that is fueling all of this. And I believe our electoral system has a major role to play in it. Now, I know most political parties will not agree with me on this. My view for proportional representation is that it should cut across everything. Presidency, proportion of votes you get should determine the proportion of ministers you appoint, the proportion of board chairmen you appoint, the proportion of ambassadors you appoint, etc., etc. Maybe that could be considered an extremist view. But if we can move to that level, it removes the incentive for the do or die. Because, again, the important thing also is the threshold. What is the minimum threshold? And I hear some talk about 30%. That, for me, should be a non-starter. That means that we are going to limit ourselves to what we currently have. From all the countries that are doing party lists, the highest proportion, I've seen 10% in one country. You have even as low as 1.something%. So it has to be such that it opens the space to many more. And when we say political parties, unfortunately here in this part of the world, a political party is not doing what a real political party is supposed to do. Politics should be about ideas, about concepts. It should not be about individuals. But where to a large extent our politics is centered around individuals. Now, if the party represents a certain way of thinking, a certain ideology, then if you have many of them coming together, we can share ideas, We can discuss, we can disagree, we can agree. Eventually, we get some consensus.
How would you respond to critics of this PR system who argue that it gives rise to coalition governments, you know, which in turn, I mean, sometimes lead to legislative gridlocks, you know, the inability to carry out coherent, you know, policies, especially, you know, when in most pressing moments.
What is wrong with coalition governments? Now, yes, it may make the process of arriving at a decision probably much more difficult and much more cumbersome. But at the end of the day, you have more agreement. And at the end of when you reach an agreement, you know that most, if not everybody, is coming along. But when you have a system where a small set of people decide what to do, and the rest is take it or leave it, which is why we find that elections finish today. Next week, we are planning for the next elections. Parties, those who have won, planning how they are going to retain power. Those who have lost, planning how they are going to get those who have won out so that they can go there. Because those who win take everything. Your relatives, your acquaintances are the ones who get the major benefits. Those who have lost, they don't get anything. So all the, if we observe opposition parties, when they're in opposition, what they focus on is undermining and discrediting those in government.
Have you averted your mind to the hostile, if you like, political camps that this is likely to create? I mean, you have more parties, everybody is in their own corners and all of these, you know, that kind of camps which might destabilize in a way smooth political policy or systems if you have all of these PRs.
In a family, let's go down to that level. When the children have got to a certain age, they should be involved in decision making. If you can do that, you have coherence in the family, you have unity. I'm not saying that 10-year-old children or 5-year-old children should be involved in decision making, but when a child has reached adolescence, crossed adolescent age, they have their own way of thinking. They have what they believe is right. So at least engage them, discuss, and then you can make more informed decisions. At the end of the day, I run a company. I've been running my own company for more than 20 years. And what I've found that works is building consensus. You can be a managing director and rule by dictatorship. What I want is what we do. Just do what I say. You'll find out eventually that your company will not do so well. Because even a cleaner has a perspective that you sitting up there do not have. And therefore, if you can get views from everybody, it enriches you. Same thing with governance. If governance, particularly parliament, and you know, I was in a cabinet that had people from several political parties. President Kaba's 2000, after the interregnum 1998,
okay.
His cabinet from 1998, I left in 2001. We had people from about 6 different political parties in the cabinet. Therefore, there was a lot more unity. President Kaba reached out to every party to get them involved in governance. So, if you have a system that works that way, that encourages everybody to participate, and we can sit together and agree on what our national development goals are, and we can all work towards achieving that, I believe we'll have a better society.
All right, let me cross over to the lecturer. We're looking at practical terms in, say, Leone. I mean, practically, say, well, this is one country perhaps where one party presents, let's say, one candidate, one person, for whatever consideration, and even where that candidate is good by every estimation, you will hardly find the other side actually like saying, oh yes, he's a great candidate. They will always pull legs. I mean, across all boards, the highest level, the lower cadres also. Should we have the PR system, I mean, where you have all of these other parties? Is it also not the case that minority parties will necessarily, if you like, or unnecessarily hold the others to ransom in terms of these policies?
Well, one of the arguments against PR is that it breeds weak government. Because when you have to make deals with all these minority parties, you dilute your own policies. So so you have a coalition. I'm not really in favor of coalition governments, because at the end of the day, if a coalition fails, if one group in that coalition fails, it's back to elections. So if you look like a place like Israel is constantly in elections, and the reason for that is because they have minority parties that hold the main parties to ransom. Exactly. So they now, their own kind of policies is diluted because they have to find areas where they can actually compromise. First past the post system, with all the problems with it brings in a stable government. It ensures that you have a political party that has won the election, that has a majority in the House, that can rule. PR does not, and that is the main issue with PR. In within our own context, the minority parties, yes, we had some there. You say, the thing about PR, those who are advocating for PR are those who are in the minority parties, because it best serves them.
Are you speaking directly to the sponsor?
Okay, I don't know.
I know SLPP is advocating for it as well now. They're in government.
Well, the minority parties is obviously would advocate for it, but it does not deliver strong, decisive government that can rule. What we tend to have is a weak, unstable kind of system.
How would you respond, Doc?
Did we have a weak, unstable government 1996 and 2002?
The contexts are different, because we are just coming out from war. People, the appetite to go back into conflict was not there. We are talking about 20 years or 25 years. Yes, so the contexts are different. SLPP might be advocating for it now, but I don't know why you're advocating for it, but I think it's the idea that it will bring in more women, more groups that are excluded from the
Yes, I absolutely agree with that.
You are getting quieter.
No, I'm just, I'm an actor as well. I modulate my voice. The thing is, from my perspective, yes, I agree. It may make governance a bit more, call it cumbersome, in that you have to bring more people along with you. But it is not the same as a coalition government like you have in Israel. It is not the same. And the threshold for getting a seat in parliament, if you have one seat in parliament, yes, your views can be heard, but you cannot hold anybody to ransom. If you have 2 seats, if you have 5 seats out of 100 seats, you cannot hold anybody to ransom. Your views will be heard because you are there. So what I'm saying is that yes, there are advantages and disadvantages of both systems. None is 100%. But what I go back to, what do we want to achieve as a nation? What is are the most important things we want to achieve as a nation? Is it to continue fighting? And as Lena said, soon after the war, the appetite for conflict was weak. There is a bit more appetite for conflict now. So if we continue along this path, we are going to have major conflicts. So my view is, let us break the chain. Let us adopt a system that makes for much more unity, that makes for much more views at the table, that can bring more women into the equation. I was chairman of ActionAid Leone. I was also on the international board for a while. ActionAid has a policy that at least 50% of members of the board should be women. Now when you say that for national board, where are we going to find them? But ActionAid always found them. In fact, we had 60% women on the board. And because of that, the perspective that you get in that kind of group is different from where you have 95% men. So it will make for more women involvement. It will make for more even disabled involvement. There are formulas that can be used. They actually need elections for the international board. They have a formula, I do not understand it, but there's a formula that they use which enables them to get representation from the different parts of the world, and also women as against men. They have the formula. When you finish voting, they apply the formula, and you have the number of women that they need. You have representatives from Europe, America, Africa, etc. So, what I am saying, I do not have all the answers. None of us does. But we need to sit down and discuss these issues. We need to open it up for more discussion, more enlightenment. We need to do more research. And then we all need to sit down and agree. There are so many things we have to discuss and agree. PR is not just you wake up one day and you are going to PR system. It will be a disaster.
All right. Welcome back to the program, Bottom Line. We'll continue with our guests, Dr. Julius Spencer and Lena Thompson. I'll stay with you, Dr. Spencer, before crossing over to the political scientist. The PR system. Madam Thompson raised an issue in respect of weak performances, probably either of the government or the political parties themselves. With the PR system, there is this argument that despite weak electoral performances, it may be difficult to remove reasonably sized parties from power.
Well, you see, for me,
even with weak electoral performances,
for me, my focus is on what does this country need going forward. And for me, the most important thing we need is national cohesion. We need unity of purpose. We need to be able to identify the national development goals that we all want, and we all need to work together to achieve those goals. It is not happening now. So I believe that the electoral system has a major role to play in that. Now, yes, I don't know about a party being difficult to remove a weak party from power. The elections are held under PR system, whether even under the one past the post system, a party gets say 60% of the vote and wins the election. By the time we come around to next election, they have lost a lot of popularity. It happens across the world. So whether they win or not depends on the electorate. For us in this part of the world, we need a lot of voter education. We need political education in Sierra Leone.
How does that get across, Lena? I mean, his focus in terms of all of the intricacies about the PR system is actually bothered about the what he describes as national cohesion, which he believes is what Sierra Leone needs at the moment in the considered context.
I fully agree with Doc. We need to be a cohesive unit. We have seen the tension or the tempo, if you want to call it that way, since 2007, increasing every day. Now we also have to take it into concept the use of social media. I think in 2020, it wasn't in existence. Even in 2007, it wasn't in existence. So we now have a situation which is volatile because of the use of social media. Also, another important point, I think I understand where Doc is coming from is that if we do not put a check on the electoral system, we will fall back to where we are in
1991.
1991, exactly. So for him, the electoral system is a point that could stop that.
He doesn't want to get to Lungi again.
And I totally agree with that. But at the same time, changing the electoral system might not even change that if we don't change our mindset as citizens of Sierra Leone, and also if the political parties themselves don't change. Most of this tempo comes from the political party, the rhetoric that comes out of it.
Is it not the case that they rely on the electoral system to be all over place?
Yes, they use it. Obviously, if you're gaining from this electoral system, why change it? You know. So, but we have to make them be accountable on what they say. Sierra Leoneans don't hold their people accountable. They don't. If our politicians, you go somewhere, you talk out of turn, we hold you accountable, people will know what to say and do in public. That's the problem. So when you have this first past the vote system, which is adversarial, everybody wants to win, it feeds into that kind of culture that we have. And it's a pity that we have forgotten where we come from. It's really a pity, and people ought to remember there's a whole generation now who does not know about the war, and that is something that should be taught, should be reminded of us. So for them, it's I will win at all cost. And even the politicians who remember the war tend to have amnesia, you know. So it is not only about, for me, I would take it a little bit broader. It's not only about the electoral system. The electoral system has a lot to play, but also it's about our political system. What is the system we have? Our party system. If we're talking about, if we introduce PI, it has a broad base. First past the vote system can also have a broad base, but political parties, which are the main stakeholder in any system, have to play a part in it. They have to open themselves up. They have to recruit more people. They have to be accessible. They have to be they have to be progressive, and that is something that we don't have in Sierra Leone. As opposed for us moving forward, 21st century, we want to go back into the decade. So we have to look at all the context there. And what is our political party doing? What are political leadership doing? The point about being a leader, being a leader is not to be a dictator. Being a leader is to gather everybody and empower them so that they could, so that your own vision is also their own vision. So there is nothing wrong in a first past the post system where a party wins an election, but also has a hand, stretches out a hand to other people who are normally outside of that spectrum to come in and also.
There's a fear they will undermine.
No, that's the thing I don't get, because if and I get it that what we have, one of the problems that I see is that our political parties are so ingrained that it is us inside. Okay, you know me there with me, so now that we for enjoy. So you are excluding everybody else, even though those people might have voted for you. Okay, those people might have voted for you, but if a leader now from a political party appoints somebody from the outside, those in the party would be angry at that, because you see, these are all the little things that we have to take into play. It's not, it is very broad based. We have to look at the bigger picture here.
Yes,
I agree with Lena. Totally. The only thing we disagree on is what is the pathway.
Yes.
What is the pathway? How can we change all of this? I have traveled the length and breadth of this country. I'm a Creole. I've gone to all parts of this country. I've spent time in all the districts. There is no large town in Sierra Leone where I've not been. Yeah, exactly. We used to go together in those days. No. Tribalism does not exist in Sierra Leone. It exists only because of politics. Without politics, there is no tribalism. I've gone to a village. I don't know anybody. I cannot speak the language, but I'm able to communicate with them.
That
I
must
need a
have been
place to
Nago, my village.
No. This was on the Liberia border. Years ago I was traveling, got there at night, couldn't get transport to go ahead. I went and knocked on somebody's door, and they opened their doors to me, gave me a place to sleep, gave me food to eat, gave me warm water to have a bath. They don't know me from Adam. I cannot speak their language. And I have found that this holds across the country. It is only when politics comes into play that tribalism rears its head. So, for me, as I say, I agree with Lena. There are so many things we need to correct. But the question is, where do we start? And how do we begin to change that culture? If we maintain what we have now, it will never change. It can only get worse. I used to be a student in university. I was a member of a fraternity and of another social club. Initiation, very simple.
By the way, do we know that club?
Osiris fraternity.
Okay.
And I was a member of the psychedelic parliamentarians. Psychedelic parliamentarians was enjoyment. Osiris fraternity was discipline, order, humility, etc., etc. And our initiation mirrored that. Psychedelic parliamentarians did not have any initiation. We were invited to join the came in, we went to parties, etc., etc. Years later, I was invited to the initiation party of psychedelic parliamentarians. The first place I was surprised they now wore uniforms. We never did. And they had some initiation ceremony, I didn't witness it. But from talking to them, I knew it was not just a simple initiation ceremony. When we have a system where I'm initiating, I will start by, I pinch the new ones coming. The new ones who are coming, when it's their turn, they not only pinch, they pinch and slap. Next set, not only pinch and slap, they pinch, slap, they box, they kick. So it gets progressively worse. That's where we are with our politics in this country. It is getting progressively worse. Those of us who, as I always tell people, have a long-term vision, we can see far. I can guarantee you that if we do not change the electoral system we have in this country, we are going to go back to war.
How would you sample the preparedness of our politicians in all of this? I mean, there's always one issue when it comes to the executive, for example, preparing the list and all of this. So, I mean, that would raise some eyebrows within the system. I mean, you will have people, only those who maybe have the knife and the yam will end up, doing all of this. When you look at the current political parties, and the debates about this PR system moving around, what evaluation have you? Do you think our politicians, our parties are prepared for this?
I cannot say with certainty yes, because most of them don't really understand. That is where the problem lies. Until we all understand what we are talking about.
That this system will give more power to the party executive and their
well, I'm not sure they are afraid. What a lot of those, particularly those in parliament, are concerned about is that they will lose that individual control of a constituency, which is based on popularity. Call it popularity. Somebody may be better for the party, better for the people, but is not popular because he's not used to giving handouts, not used to sending girls to Bondo Society, paying for them, etc., etc. But in terms of the role of a parliamentarian, somebody else may be a much better representative of that constituency than the one that is popular that they will vote for. So, which is why I say, what we need to first determine is what do we want, where do we want to go. When we have made that decision, then we can work out the system that is suitable for us. I have said before, we do not have to adopt any of the existing systems in its totality. We can modify to suit our own context, which is what I'm advocating for, which is why I say we need to discuss these issues so that everybody understands, the politicians understand, ordinary citizens understand, and we agree that this is how we are going to go.
As we conclude this discussion, Lena? I mean, when I'm looking ahead, from your point of view in terms of projections, of our political system, our electoral system, with these debates beginning to take the lead, what would be your opinion, your advice, your projections? What do you see the country should be working to? You spoke of civic education. I mean, getting the mindset, people to understand we have that unit in the country. Maybe it will continue to amplify those needs. But in terms of this issue about violence, in terms of this issue about what is happening now, from your own view, how do you think Sierra Leoneans, leaders, political parties should manage this?
Well, really, 2023, I know a lot of people who are very
Scared.
We're very scared about the prospect of violence, because one thing we can guarantee is violence. And in any political system where the guarantee is violent, that means it's unstable. And you have a lot of people who are not looking forward. I'm not looking forward to it, frankly. I'm not. And we've already seen the kind of rhetoric already, as you pointed out at the beginning of the show. There are by-elections now going on. By the end of the day, we'll probably hear about skirmishes up there. What confidence does that give us as citizens? And we have to look at our kids. We look at our kids, we go to elections and we have a whole day of holiday to go and vote. In other countries, you go to work, you take a lunch break, you go put your vote, you go home again. At the end of the day, you sit in front of the TV, they call results. Next day, you go to school. Change of government, no change of government, your routine does not change. It does not change. But for us, we'll be wondering, we have to go take my kid in school just because they are shouting there, there are rallies around there, I should not pass over there because they will stab me, they will steal my stuff. Why? That's it. I fail to understand why. Somebody said to me, Lena, I should know because it's the be-all of the end. But why? Why should we destabilize our lives? We've come a long way. And that idea of running back into Guinea or Gambia as a refugee, it doesn't hold water. Nobody will take us back anyway now. Everybody, each country now, around our sub-region have their own problems. We are in a unique in a situation where we've been peaceful. Our transition from war to peace has been successful. Why can't we carry on, especially and build on what we have, build on the peace? And there's so many things that we have to do in terms of our economic development. We are not there now. Okay, we are not there now. For me, what I pray for 2023 is to have a peaceful election, a peaceful registration process which starts in September, because that is where it starts. A peaceful election day, a peaceful transition, acceptance of the results, and also transition. What I think PR would not come in now, maybe in the next 2 elections after this and so forth. But for now, we have to deal with what we have. We have to put things in place to ensure we do not go down that road of violence. And that means the political parties themselves have to be very vocal about it. I remember 2018 elections, where there were spits of violence, and I kept asking people, well, why doesn't the political parties come out and say something? Disassociate themselves from it. Say, they might be saying they are supporters, but we do not condone their kind of behavior. When political parties, when leaders come out, in order to be a leader, you have to stand. Sometimes it means you have to stand alone. You have to stand alone for what is right. So if your political supporters are fighting, stand up and say, this is not what I want. This is not my party. This is not what I am standing for. Disown them. You would see that that rhetoric, that culture of violence would stop. but because they feed into it, as if that if their political party supporters do not fight, that means it means that they are not passionate about politics. For God's sake, it's only politics. Life has to go on. You know, people dying for political leaders that do not even know them. It tells us something. And the beauty about, when we talk about elections are one of the hallmarks of a democratic state. It means that it enables us to become a mature democracy. You see, you look at states like Britain or United States and Europe, the reason that they have been able to mature, to overcome some of these problems, is because they've been able to use elections as a means of dialogue. When one political party does not suit you, vote them out. Go wait for another 5 years, change your policy, change your personnel, do whatever you have to do, and then you come back. You know, so we have to constantly be reinventing ourselves. That is what political parties are about.
All right, I have to stop you there. Dr. Spencer, your parting shots.
I still say, as long as we continue practicing this winner-take-all system, things can only get worse. People do not change because you want them to change or you ask them to change. There has to be motivation for change. I keep telling people the human being learns because of two things: reward and punishment. Do the right thing, do well, you get reward. You do the wrong thing, you get punishment. We have inverted that process in this country, where wrong has become right and right has become wrong. So many things are happening now, and we have a whole generation that don't even know right from wrong, which is why school children will be protesting that they are not allowing them to cheat. They don't say anything wrong in cheating. So all of these challenges, yes, even that do not have any, you do not have a direct relationship to elections, but if we do a deep dive, you will find that there is a link somewhere to the system that we are practicing, the electoral system, the political system. Even affects our education system, it affects everything. So for me, and I think there are moves to institute proportional representation for the next election. And I would urge that we need to think through it carefully. We need to have dialogue. Unfortunately, I was not able to attend the pre-leg on the political whatever act because I was tied up with my production. I really would love to engage Parliament and parliamentarians. I hope I'll have an opportunity to do that at some point. And I hope that we can all sit down and talk about this, dialogue about it, share ideas, look at the possibilities, and generally eventually agree on what is the system that we want, how is it going to work, critical issues like the threshold, etc., etc. Is it open list? Is it closed list? How can we ensure that the political parties, as Lena says, are doing the right thing to ensure that the system works? There's a lot that needs to be discussed. There's a lot that needs to be analyzed and understood for the system to work. Right now, all people know is the winner take all and how it affects their lives. How if you win, what you benefit, and if you lose, what you lose. And you know, your ordinary people on the streets, as Lena said, the politician probably doesn't know you. You go fight, you die, they don't even know you who you are. So but at the end of the day, this tension, political tension, has so pervaded our society that the politicians at times don't have any control over what their so-called followers are doing. Even if, but again, to some extent, they benefit from it. Therefore, even if they stand publicly and condemn it, it will not really change anything as long as we continue with the same system. So, my parting shot, please, please, please let us discuss, let us dialogue before we move to whatever we're doing.
Joseph, quick, let me just say something. When we talk about our context, first past the post system is easy, it's simple.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. There has been the discussion around the political system, the electoral system that we're yearning for, what has been discussed on social media, what has been discussed in other circles and all of those. We will continue this dialogue. The SFDC will continue to set the agenda, set the stage, to get the views of other, say, Leonians, other members of our society to come to this platform and talk to us about what they think, what they believe should actually be, the way forward insofar as efforts to avoid this violence during elections, before elections, after elections, are actually an issue. Hope you enjoyed this program. If you missed part of all of this edition, we are back with a repeat broadcast of this show. Otherwise, you join us next week for a fresh edition of Bottom Line. Many thanks to all of you who joined us on radio, who joined us on television here, or on our Facebook page and other platforms. We are back next week with a fresh edition of Bottom Line. Thanks to members of the crew, the technical crew. As usual, this program was produced by Koroma. Until we meet again at Broadcasting House next time, Joseph Ibinda Kapuwa is the name. Wishing you all a pleasant evening. Bye-bye.